Hello viewers, yes, this is Ranjana ma'am and you are watching. Yes, it's mine as well as your channel. And the thumbnail says it all, you know it. Yes, it is Beethoven for my class 12 ISC students. They have been requesting me for a long time. But before I start, if you have not subscribed to my channel up till now, please do. And don't forget to press the like button. After watching the video, I'm sure you like it. I get such nice comments, but the likes are so few. So anyway, what are we waiting for? Let's start. So I always suggest that read the box or that part where the something about the author or the poet or his poems are written. That means the previous page of the text. So here we find Beethoven by Shane Koizen is a descriptive poem. What type of poem? It's a descriptive poem. Uses vivid imagery to explore the theme of acceptance. And Beethoven, he became so famous, but his childhood or his youth, they were not very pleasant ones. Why? Because he suffered abuse. So Beethoven suffered from several physical and emotional abuse. Yet his whole existence was so caught up in trying to achieve the pinnacle or the zenith or the topmost point of excellence that he found it very difficult to connect with others. So now let's start the poem. Beethoven. Listen. His father made a habit of hitting him. So habit out of hitting him. See, some men drink, some men yell, some men hit their children. This man did it all because I guess all men want their boys to be geniuses. So by listen, the poet is trying to attract the attention of his audience or his readers. So he is demanding attention from his readers, and he says that Beethoven's father, what did he do? He made a habit out of hitting him. So his father, this is what we say domestic violence. So his father would continuously hit him. And here the poet says that some people, they drink, some people shout, yell means shouting, some people hit their children. So why did he do this? He did it all. So he, out of trying to cope up with frustration, what did he do? He did all of them. That means he drank, he shouted, and he also hit Beethoven. This man did it all because I guess all men want their boys to be genius. Yeah, whether the parent is a genius or not, but every parent nourishes the desire that his children or his child or her child should be geniuses. Beethoven. So he wants that his son should be the best, and in order to achieve this success, he would regularly beat him. He wanted perfection, and so till there was perfection, Beethoven suffered physical abuse, mental abuse. So sometimes he would beat up, sometimes he would violently attack. Physical abuse, beat him up, and sometimes verbal attack. Yeah, you can do nothing, you are a good for nothing fellow, and all that. Little boy living in a house where a name meant nothing. Living in a house where mercy had to be earned through each perfect note tumbling up through the roof to tickle the toes of angels whose hearts couldn't hold half the passion that was held in the hands of a young boy who was hard of hearing. So, these few lines, through this we come to know that Beethoven was partially deaf, who was hard of hearing, he could not hear. So, when he was a little boy, he lived in a house which was quite strict house. And in this house, he was not the pampered child like you all are. He was a poor, helpless boy. And his identity and humanity, they were not regarded at all. He was not valued for that talent which he had as a person. His talent had no meaning. They were not given any pamperings or any admiration. He received no admiration for his talents. Poor fellow. Can you imagine? Living in a house where mercy had to be earned through each perfect note tumbling. So he lived in such a house, that means his home life must have been really miserable. He suffered on account of this. Mercy had to be earned. That means he would get mercy from his father only when all the notes were perfect. Up through the roof to tickle the toes of angels whose harps couldn't hold half the passion that was held in the hands of the young boy who was hard of hearing. So his musical notes, they would rise up and go out of the roofs, and as if tickling the toes of the celestial beings, the angels, it would move, his music would move up to heaven and tickle the toes of angels who were playing divine music. But according to the speaker or the poet or the narrator, whatever these angels played, the angels played on their harps. But whatever music the angels played, they were supposed to be divine music. But those harps could not capture half the passion that was to be found in Beethoven's music. The talented hands of Beethoven produced such music which could leave the music produced by the angels way behind. The angels produced their music on harp. But Beethoven's music, when it reached the heavens, it could compete with the angels, and the angels' music did not have even half of what his fingers produced, Beethoven's fingers. Beethoven, who heard his father's anthem every time he put his finger to ivory, it was not good enough. So he played slowly, not good enough. So he played softly, not good enough. So he played strongly, not good enough. And when he could play no more and his fingers cramped up like the gnarled roots of tree trunks, it was not good enough. So the father seems to be a fastidious person. He is very difficult to please. So poor fellow, every time he would be playing or he wanted to play, the voice of his father declared that he had not played it good enough. So who heard his father's anthem every time he put his finger to ivory. So whenever he tried to play the piano, he, as if he heard his father's strict voice saying that whatever he was playing was not good enough. So it was like as if an anthem or a refrain being repeated again and again and again. So he had to meet up to the standards of perfection of his father, who was not pleased at all. He was very difficult to please. So whatever he played, if he played softly, not good enough. If he played slowly, not good enough. And if he played strongly, not good enough. So if you have a father like this, I don't know what you all will do. But poor Beethoven, he was such a mild and meek type of child. He bore all the physical and mental tortures unleashed upon him by his father. So a time came when, as if he couldn't play anymore. If he plays strongly, no. If he plays softly, no. If he plays slowly, no. So finally what happened, when he went on playing, so his fingers, so if you go on playing and playing and playing, so what happens? His fingers, they knotted up in a lot of pain. So there were painful cramps. The muscles, it resembled the gnarled root of the trees, of ancient trees. The fingers look like that. But his father's voice would not stop. So he would go on saying, it was not good enough. It's in bold letters. Why? So the father was never pleased. Poor fellow. So what did Beethoven do? Beethoven, a musician without his most precious tool, his eardrum, could no longer pound out rhythms for the symphonies playing in his mind. He couldn't hear the audiences clapping, couldn't hear the people loving him, couldn't hear the women in front row whispering Beethoven. So can you imagine what pain it is for a musician not to be able to hear the notes he is playing? Why? Because his eardrum was affected. He could not hear. He was hard of hearing. So the rhymes which he played in the piano, the rhymes which were playing in his mind and which he put into practice in his piano, so these rhymes he could not, the notes he could not hear. He could not hear the applause coming from the audience. The audience, when they loved, they applauded, but he could not hear it. When you hear the audience clapping, it is as if a booster. They help you to perform better. They inspire you. But poor fellow, he couldn't hear the clappings. Neither could he hear the people loving him and saying, Beethoven, once again, we love you and all that, but he couldn't hear those. And he could also not hear women. They look at him in admiration and whisper the name Beethoven. So he couldn't hear that also. As they let the music invade their nervous system like an armada, marching through firing cannonballs, desolating every molecule in their body into explosions of heavenly sensation. Each note leaving track marks over every inch of that body, making them ache for one more hit. He was an addiction. So how did his music affect the audience? So the music created by him, when they entered the ears of the listeners, his eardrum, the music didn't enter. But what about the audience, his listeners? When the music penetrated through their ears, so the sounds of the music would wash over their nervous system, as if they are invading the armada. And then the firing volleys of cannonballs that detonate with body, and as if bombing each and every molecule and nerve, ending in cascading explosions. Cascade means a waterfall. So cascading explosion of ecstatic sensation. So audience, how would they react to his music? This is how. Each note leaving track marks over every inch of that body, making them ache for one more hit. He was an addiction. So each note produced by Beethoven, it left its mark on the listeners. And they desperately ached, they craved, they wanted one more. That means we say now one more, encore, once again, when the performer delights us. So the audience, they were delighted with such beautiful music and they wanted one more hit from him. So he was as if like an addiction. Addiction, yeah, when you get addicted to mobiles, some people get addicted to drugs, some people get addicted to wine. And his music was like addiction. When you get addicted to something, you want more and more of it. And this is what the audience or the listeners wanted from Beethoven. Once more. So the music was like addiction for them. It was like a drug which they wanted to take again and again. What an effect. And see what his father said, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And kings and queens, it didn't matter. The man got down on his knees for no one, but amputated the legs of his piano so he could feel the vibrations through the floor. The man got down on his knees for music. So Beethoven, he did not give importance to kings and queens. He never bent before them. However high the dignitary might be, but he never bowed, neither before kings nor before queens. So he was, so normally what do people do? When they come face to face with a king or a queen, they bow down to show their respect, but he was different. He did not bow down. But when did he bow? Because he bowed before music. So what did he do? Music was a goddess to him. And he bowed before music. And not only that, he had amputated the legs, that means cut the legs of his piano. Why? So that he could press himself, or rather his body, close to the floor and feel the vibrations of the musical notes through the wooden floorboard. See, if you can't hear, at least when you feel the vibrations, you can understand. Like it is said, the snakes can't hear, but they can feel the vibrations on the ground. And that makes them realize someone is coming or someone is going. So what did he do? He had amputated, or he had cut the legs of the piano so that he would be close to the notes. Amputated the leg of his piano so he could feel the vibrations. That means so that he could feel the musical notes through the wooden floor. So he knelt only before music. Music was his goddess. He didn't care to bow or kneel before kings and queens, but he knelt before something which he considered to be a goddess, and that was music. And when the orchestra played his symphonies, it was the echoes of his father's anthem repeating itself like a broken record. A broken record it was not good enough, so they played slowly. Not good enough, not good enough, so they played softly. Not good enough, so they played strongly. Not good enough. So his mind, he would as if remember the remarks of his father, but I don't know if he could not hear, then how could he hear? If he could not hear the clappings then how could he, if he could not hear the clappings, then how did he hear the remarks made by his father that it is not good enough? Maybe through his gestures and all that, he made it clear to Beethoven that he still needed perfection, it was not good enough. So, when the orchestra played the musical notes of Beethoven, it was the echoes of his father. So he remembered the echoes of his father, repeating itself like a broken record. Have you had the experience of a broken record? You put the record on the gramophone. Nowadays you don't have any gramophones, but if you have any old one and you put a broken record on it, so it will, the place where it is broken now, so it will go on playing the same thing again and again. So his father's anthem, that means his father's words, not good enough. So this was his father's anthem. So when the orchestra played slowly, it was as if not good enough. When the orchestra played soft, it was not good enough. When they played slowly, not good enough. When they played softly, not good enough. When they played strongly. So though everyone applauded him, the orchestras playing his musical notes were a real hit, but as if the father's words, like an anthem or like a broken record, would keep on ringing in his ears. So they tried to mock the man, make fun of the madness by mimicking the movements, holding their bows a quarter of an inch above the strings, not making a sound. It was perfect. So they tried to mock the man, make fun of his madness by mimicking the movements, holding their bows a quarter of an inch above the strings, not making a sound. It was perfect. So these orchestra, the musicians playing in an orchestra, even if they played without any faults, they played slowly, he considered them not good enough. When they played softly, not good enough, because that is what he was accustomed to. When they played strongly, then also he feels they were not good enough. So now what do the musicians do? They consider him to be mad, eccentric person. So in order to make fun of his eccentricism, they imitated, mimicked his movements. What did they do? They held their bows but a quarter of an inch away from the strings so that it would not make any sound. So since he couldn't hear, but he found it perfect. So these people, the musicians, they were stunned. So long as they played slowly, softly, strongly, he considered that it was not enough. But when they imitated that they were playing but they made no sound, and he found it was perfect. So they don't know how to react, whether to consider him a mad person or a genius. You see, deaf have an intimacy with silence. It's there in their dreams. And the musicians turned to one another, not knowing what to make of the man trying to calculate the distance between madness and genius, realizing that Beethoven's musical movements could take you the distances reaching past the towers of Babylon. So the speaker or the poet, he explains or he tries to make us realize that deaf people, they have an attachment with silence, absolute silence, which the people who hear, they cannot connect themselves to silence in the way deaf people can connect themselves to silence. And silence is why? Because silence is always present to them. It is as if like a friend or a companion or a partner who also invades their land of their dreams at night. Beethoven was not completely deaf, he was partially deaf. And that is why probably Beethoven thought that soundless comedy of those musicians to be perfect. when the musicians were imitating that they were performing, but the strings and the bow, they were not touching each other. So there was no sound, there was silence. And yet, to Beethoven, he felt it was perfect music. Why? Because the poet says that they have a perfect relationship with silence, the deaf people. So now what do the musicians do? They turn to one another, not knowing what to make of the man, trying to calculate the distance between madness and genius, realizing that Beethoven's musical measurements could take you the distances, reaching past the towers of Babylon. So now the musicians, they are confused. They look at each other, they exchange glances, they look at each other. They don't know what to think of this man, this eccentric man, whether he is really mad or he is a genius who cannot be understood. And finally they realizing that Beethoven's musical measurements could take you distances reaching past the towers of Babylon. So the musicians, they realize that Beethoven's music, it reaches great heights. Towers of Babylon, that means it reaches great height. It transcends far beyond the human limits, turning solar systems into symbols that crash together, causing comets to collide, creating crescendos that were so loud they shook the constellations until the stars began to fall from the sky, and it looked like the entire universe had begun to cry. So his music, Beethoven's music, it has the power, it has such power that the whole solar system seems like crashing cymbal. Cymbal is a musical instrument. Cymbal. Comets, as if they collide or they clash with each other and create a very deafening sound. And the cosmic crescendos, they seem to be so loud that they can shake the entire constellation. Constellation are groups of stars. Until the stars of the constellation, they seem to fall down. They become loose and they seem to fall down from the heavens like tears weeping through the celestial spheres. So how do the stars fall down? They fall down as if they are tears, as if the whole universe is crying. It looked that the entire universe had begun to cry. So his music had such an effect. Distance must be an illusion. The man must be a genius. So Beethoven's musical imagination, they can reach such heights. They can move through the interstellar distances. So the musicians, finally they conclude that this man is beyond doubt a genius. This man is beyond doubt a genius because the way he plays his music and the heights it reaches, the celestial beings and the constellations seem to fall down, or rather the stars of the constellations, they seem to be getting loose and falling down from the sky. The whole universe seems to weep. So Beethoven, distance must be an illusion. The man must be a genius. Beethoven, his music moving at the speed of sound. Speed of light we know, and we also know that light travels faster than sound. But sound also travels quite fast. But who is faster? Light. But here, how does Beethoven's thoughts or the ideas going on in his mind, how do they move at the speed of sound? So his mind seems to be working in a very amazing manner, in an amazing speed. So his thoughts, they as if move faster than sound, and they can transform the human emotions into sublime music. So his thoughts, they can move faster than the sound, and they can change the human emotions into sublime or divine music. And for a moment, it was like joy was a tangible thing. Tangible, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can, as if tangible, you touch something that is tangible, like you could touch it. Like for the first time, we would watch love and hate dance together in a waltz of such precision and beauty that we finally understood that history wasn't important. So when you listen to music, to Beethoven's music, so joy becomes something which you can touch. We say joy is a feeling, but Beethoven's music makes it possible to touch joy, as if, makes it as if possible to touch joy. And then love and hate. Love and hate are feelings, but they seem to be, the poet has personified them. They seem as if joining hands and dancing in a graceful manner. And the listeners or his audience, they realize for the first time that history and biography, you don't need them for such a man like Beethoven. To know the man, all we ever had to do was listen. In order to know Beethoven, you don't need history, where he was born and all that, who was his father and where did he live and spend his life. All these things are not important. You don't need to read his biographies to understand a genius like Beethoven. So what do you do? What does the poet suggest? To know the man, all we ever had to do was to listen. Just listen to his music and you will have key to everything about him. So these lines as if confirm that in order to know and understand the essence of Beethoven as a human being, what type of person he was, so just listen to his music deeply and carefully. This is what is needed. You don't need anything else. So what a wonderful poem. I'd heard about Beethoven but had never read something so brilliant about him. So nicely the poet has written about Beethoven. So once you read the poem, you feel as if now I should listen to his music. We have heard so much. I haven't listened to his music, but after reading this poem, I'm very keen on hearing his music. My God, a partially deaf man, and what immortal creations. So, this is the poem, and regarding the themes, yeah, 1 minute. Many of you ask me for the figures of speech. So in figures of speech, we find there is enjambment. What is enjambment? That means at the end of a line, there is not a pause or a comma or a full stop. The line doesn't end there. It continues to the next line. So these run-on lines, we call them. So why are these enjambments used? To create some suspense or to emphasize the keywords. Like here you have it, living in a house where mercy had to be earned through each perfect note tumbling. Up through the roof to tickle the toes of angels whose harps couldn't hold half the passion. So there is no punctuation, the lines run into the other line. And then you have examples of repetition. So repetition, like, so he played slowly, not good enough. So he played softly, not good enough. And then again, like a broken record. So these are repetitions. Alliteration, there should be alliteration. Causing comets to collide. C, but the pronunciation is K. His father made a habit of hitting him. H. Habit. His father made a habit. H. Of hitting him. Hitting. So 3 words which H sounds. The man got down on his knees for no one. So the N sound is quite dominant here. The man, N though it comes at the end, got down, the N comes at the end. On his knees, yes, here also the N sound. And for no one. So there is an N here and one also, the N sound is quite dominant. And do we have onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia means sound words. So like you have it, pound out rhythms, symbols that crash together, causing comets to collide, creating crescendos. So here also there are lots of alliteration, like creating crescendos, causing comets to collide. These are also ka. The C consonant, but the sound is K, causing comets to collide. So these are some more examples of alliteration, and here they are also considered as onomatopoeia or sound words. It resembles the sounds they denote, the words, like pound out rhythms, symbols that crash together, causing comets to collide, as if we can hear the sound of collision, creating crescendos, so a high pitched sound, something like that. So the way the sound goes to the height. So this rather the theme it is a biography rather. The poet here, the main theme is that geniuses also need to, in order to achieve perfection, the trouble they have to undergo. Beethoven, the way his father abused him, because so long as he was perfect, till he was perfect, he received abuses. So the miserable childhood life also of Beethoven. So life of Beethoven is the theme. His childhood was not a bed of roses. But from that condition, how he rose to be considered as a genius. So yes, I think I have tried to make the poem very lucid for you all. And now I'm waiting for your comments. So bye for the time being. Have a happy time.